Hello everybody, Pillars TCG here, and today I'm bringing you an overview of what you can expect from set 1 of the Pillars trading card game. So basically, first off, just to go off of the premise video I made almost a year ago, the game is going to be a very quick game. Not too quick, but not to the point where you sit there dragging it on for hours. I'm sure you could build decks for it, but the goal of the game is to be a bit more fast-paced and rely a lot more on those 2 out of 3 games, especially for tournaments, because that's just the most fair way to judge 2 decks. This is because you can only take 4 hits using your pillars as the health system, and I've already gone over these, so if you're curious to see how the game works, either check out that old premise video or the rulebook video, and that'll really help establish how the game works. One of the big things, though, that I am looking at is that the game can be played by 2 or more players. This is because growing up I had a lot of fun playing Magic the Gathering with giant 8-player free-for-alls, and I believe that could definitely be something that could be seen in Pillars. It might be harder and there might be some rule tweaks, but I think overall it could work and it could provide a lot of excitement for the game. Each deck is going to have, so 40 cards is what I was looking at when I first created the game. Due to GameCrafter restrictions, it might end up being 36 because, as you know, or if you don't know rather, GameCrafter prints in sheets of 18, which is why you get those 18 card booster packs instead of 10 or 15, and it is the same price, which is also why I recommend you stay away from games that do not give you the full 18 in their booster packs. I can understand a bit more, so they're a bit less, like 15, so they're easier to open, but still, they print 18 cards, so that's just you getting the most for your money there. But aside from that, that also means that since it's multiples of 18, the deck sizes I'm looking at would be 36 or 52. So that's currently the plan for the game, is probably more of the 36. The game is also going to be interesting because you draw 2 cards per turn. This is to balance the person that goes first draws 1, person that goes second draws 2, and then they all draw 2 after that. This will definitely help very much balance the card game for who goes first, as well as Pillars is played with leveling up cards, so you level up your pillars and your units. So being able to not just be overrun in your hand, you don't want only level 2s or level 3s or level 1s, and you need those level 1s to play, so this is just to help you out and kind of just be able to, even though your hand will be full, it's a maximum of 10 cards I believe for most of the game, this will mean you are able to play cards throughout the entire game. There are games like Pokemon that have these level up mechanics, and the reason they can get away with the 1 card is you only really have your active Pokemon that you need to super worry about, and then you just add onto your bench. So since you have a full-on battlefield to manage with leveling up, and it is a faster paced game, I've been testing out the 2 cards, and it's just been pretty good. But we have, aside from that, you need, or rather I'm going to give you a brief overview of all of the factions. So there's going to be Karak, which is the desert faction, and this will rely on your tactic cards. So basically, tactics are your like spells or your instants or sorceries, and you're going to use these in Karak to kind of stop your opponent, counter them, and win that way, even though your units and pillars will not quite be as strong. This is mostly because, well, let's face it, it's very fun to have a more gimmicky faction. So that's what Karak is going to do. It's playing off of the Shifting Sands, and so that is how the Karak faction is going to play, similar to Blue in Magic the Gathering. Dallas, the water faction, so Karak is also, their cards are going to be yellow, just to give you a bit more insight into how it's going to look. Dallas, they're going to have blue cards for the water faction, and it uses your weaker level 1 and level 2 units to win the game. So it buffs them, debuffs your opponent's stronger creatures, and tries to win that way. I think Karak and Dallas could have some very fun playstyles together, but this is just kind of like changing up the game some and having the blue be like a massive army of weaker units just to overrun your opponent. Next is Azar, the Fire faction. I've gone into an in-depth analysis of this already, but these have red cards, as you've seen on the channel before, and they destroy their own cards to get benefits, such as drawing and more attack and more abilities for their cards. So this is currently what I've been testing with the most, and aggro seems to be very strong in this game. This is a very aggro deck, so Azar might be one of the stronger factions of the time the game comes out, but ideally all of them will be equally viable and playable. Next up, we have Vitus, the Forest faction, which will have your green cards. So basically, this is the more control faction. It has your defensive units, so strong walls, strong buffs, and overall they're just, they're pretty strong from what I'm looking at. You want to be able to wait until the end of the game and win with these, which does sound hard, but there are cards with the ability Cornered. So what Cornered does is, as you lose your pillars, they gain strength. So towards the end of the game, they are incredibly strong while they're weak at the start. So that definitely gives control decks that run those a bit of an advantage. And also, even if they just want to get out their incredibly strong level 3s, and then just buff them with defensive buffs until they can't be taken down, they are able to do that using the walls in the faction, just kind of build that up. So I think that'll be interesting. Finally, we have, well, not finally, but of the colored factions, we have Morvis, the Death faction, which are going to be purple, and they use the discard pile, and they mill people's decks. So they will move cards from play, they'll put cards in the discard pile, they will get buffs from all these cards in the discard pile, or be able to bring them back. They'll have control over both theirs and the other, both their discard pile and the opponent. So Morvis is going to be fun. Classic Death faction. But yeah, the Mercenaries are just your final neutral faction, and they provide your support cards for any faction, and they do not need any sort of help, or they don't need any requirements, rather, sorry, to be played. These others, you need pillars of their colors to be played, but you do not for Mercenaries, so they're great support. So, while that took a bit to give an overview of all of them, the important part of it is each of these factions will be as viable as possible. They each have 34 cards. 10 level 1 units, 2 level 2 units, 3 level 3 units, 4 level 2 pillars, 2 level 3 pillars, and 10 tactics per faction. That should be 34, which means there are going to be 204 cards in set 1 of pillars. So that should be very exciting, while that is a very ambitious task, as most HCCGs seem to be running with 100 or 50 card sets. The way that this game works, I want all factions to be equally viable, and the only way for that to happen is to make them all have a lot of cards, so 34 cards per faction, and you can run up to 4 of each card in your deck, so there should be a lot of deck building options in this game in set 1, and that's the ideal part. I want you to be able to get it on untap, search up the first set, and build many different decks, as well as you open packs, have a lot of different cards to look forward to. I think there'll be a lot less duplicates, which is going to be really fun. So as you open your packs, 204 cards can be going through. There are also multiple rarities in the game. There's those commons, uncommons, rares, mythics, and legendaries. That's the order of how rare they are. Legendaries being the most. There will be probably 5 in the first set, 1 for each of those. Maybe more, since it will be over 200 cards. I'm not too sure on how that will go yet, but if it is, there'll be maybe a total of 10. But so far the number's at 5. And so I do want I might increase that, might add another rarity for like different looking cards, because I think with a larger set you also want the pack openings to feel a lot more special and have that excitement when you pull a very rare card. So having, even though it's annoying to have to buy a lot of cards, I do love the feeling of pulling a very rare card, so that is still going to be a part of it. The first set will also have 3 starter decks of Karak, Dallas, and Azar. This is because in the lore, the Azar faction starts the war by invading Karak, but Karak is allied with Dallas, so they come in and help them out. So that is why it's focusing on those 3. And also because it's the beginning of the war, that explains why all factions are equal. The second set will have different numbers of cards. We'll throw in multi-faction cards is the current plan, so just a sneak peek there. And the starter decks will be the Vitus and Morvis. So these 3 factions are going to be a bit more viable in set 1 just because they will end up having a bit more cards due to having some starter deck exclusive cards. But I think it still should have Vitus and Morvis being very viable, as well as mixing up factions always being a possibility and probably being a better possibility for your decks. So into the lore, I already have a video on the lore if you're curious on it, but there is going to be lore of every single card in the game, all 204 of them. You will be able to look up a blurb of them and be able to just read how it connects to the universe. I know that's not important to a lot of players, but I've realized as a creator it's helped me, and I think for the players that do care about it, because no Magic the Gathering, a lot of people like to build lore-based decks, so you should be able to kind of create your deck that fits into the lore of the game somehow. Even if it's factions that are fighting each other, you can like figure out the story you want for your deck, and you can figure it out a lot easier if there's already set lore for every single card, so you can figure out, these people ally because of this. I think that can just be really fun for you guys creating your decks if you're curious about that stuff. This is just a list of all of the other, all of the abilities in the game. I'm not sure if all of them will be in set 1, probably, but we'll see. Some of them haven't quite been changed from games like Magic the Gathering in terms of their names, but they do kind of change the game quite a bit here, especially with how you only have 4 health, and so getting things to hit through is a lot more important. So most of them have been changed from Magic the Gathering, both in name and ability, with some of the same core effects, but some of them are pretty similar but just play completely differently. So yeah, I believe that is all of the current stuff I need to keep you updated with in Pillars. If you have any ideas for the game, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm definitely looking at some community support in the game. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Any concerns about it, I'll also be happy to answer those, because I'm feeling pretty good about the direction that the game is going for whenever its release is. So thank you everyone for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, just very much help out the channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already. The more exposure for the game, the more people are able to play it, and that's just the ultimate goal, is to create a fun game for people to either buy packs and open or have tournaments on Untap with. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.